So I'm back with this book. I'm kind of glad I started reading this book because this is the one that my sister gave me. So yeah. So the next one that's in this collection of fairy tales is called The Willow Tree. So yeah. There was not a prettier girl in Hingshan than Liho, the only daughter of a rich old mandarin who lived in a beautiful house, 2 stories in height, which is a rare thing in China, and showed that the owner was a man of great wealth. Besides being a very pretty girl, Liho was always dressed in the brightest, softest, and most expensive silks that her father could buy. She liked best to wear peach-colored silk, embroidered with silver, and if you could have seen her sitting on her balcony on a moonlit night, with flowers twined in her hair, and the shining peach-colored silk falling in soft folds about her, you would have thought her the prettiest girl you had ever seen, and worthy to marry a prince. But Liho did not care for princes. In fact, she did not think of them at all, for she had fallen in love with her father's secretary, whose name was Wang. He lived in the gardener's cottage on an island in the river which ran through the garden. The old mandarin, whose name was Hing Feng, did not like the state of affairs at all, and had forbidden the young man to come near the house, at the same time forbidding Liho to leave it, so that the lovers might have no chance of meeting. He went still further, for he betrothed Liho to an old Tajin, or duke, who was very rich. One night Hing Feng came to his daughter as she was sitting on her balcony, and told her that he had made all the arrangements for her marriage to the Tajin. "I don't love him," sobbed Liho. "I love Wang, and I cannot marry anyone else." "Put Wang out of your mind," replied her father sternly. "Wang shall never be your husband. I have promised the Tajin that you shall marry him when the peach tree blossoms." Now the willow tree was in blossom then, for it was early in the year, but the peach tree would not bloom until the spring. So from that day, Liho watched the unfolding of the buds on the peach tree, which grew close to her window, with sorrow and dread in her heart. "Is it possible that Wang is dead?" she wondered, "or has he forgotten all about me?" Wang was very unhappy too. He was not dead, neither had he forgotten Liho. He thought of her day and night, and at last, one evening, he sent her a message. Liho was sitting on her balcony as usual, when a little boat made out of half a coconut shell, and fitted with a tiny sail, floated right to her feet. She ran to pick it up, and inside she found a colored bead she had given her lover, which was a sure proof that the boat came from Wang, and also a piece of bamboo paper on which these words were written: "When the willow fades away, and the peach tree groweth gay, tell me, sweetheart, can it be they will steal my love from me?" It was sweet and romantic to have a message from her lover come in this way, and it made Liho very happy. So she took her ivory tablets from the bosom of her peach-colored dress, and wrote on them: "When the peach tree blooms, sweetheart, thou and I must weep and part. Hasten then to take the prize ere 'tis seen by robbers' eyes." Liho knew that her lover would understand this kind of language, so she put the tablets in the boat and lighted a stick of frankincense and placed it on the bow. Then she leaned over the balcony and watched the little boat sail away in the darkness, saying softly to herself, "He will come for me before my wedding day." But Liho was not so sure after all, for through the still night air, heavy with the scent of flowers, she half imagined that she could hear the blossoms on the willow tree sighing faintly. "It will be too late. We are dying, for Wang has promised the last time they met that they would come for her while the willow was still in blossom." And then the buds on the peach tree seemed to say, "We are nearly ready to open. Then she will marry Tajin." Wang waited for the return of the frail little boat, but the waves brought it to his feet at last, and when he read the verse on Liho's ivory tablets, his smile went up to the corner of his eyes, as Chinese smiles generally do. Then he went to the cottage and called the gardener and his wife. "Do you know when the Tajin is coming?" he asked. "Indeed I do," replied the gardener. "The betrothal feast is set for next Thursday, on the moon, for the moon will then be lucky. The mandarin has ordered the gardeners to take 6 dozen carp out of the fish ponds, and there are to be golden and silver pheasants on the table, and as many oysters as his guests can eat," chimed his wife, "and 6 casks of wine to be broached. I hear that such a casket of jewels as the Tajin is bringing his bride has never been seen before," continued the gardener. "There is a necklace of pearls, and each pearl is as big as a sparrow's egg." "Oh, how stupid you are," interrupted his wife. "As big as a pigeon's egg, you mean." "I said sparrow's egg, imbecile," retorted the gardener. "Idiot," repeated the woman angrily. "I say pigeon's egg." "Never mind," Wang broke in. "It doesn't matter which. What I want to know is whether you can borrow me one of the servants' dresses and smuggle me into the banquet room that night." Now both the gardener and his wife knew about Wang's love story, but neither of them dared to help him. They were afraid to risk the anger of such a rich and powerful mandarin as Li Ho's father. What preparations there were for the betrothal feast! Ying Feng never stopped giving orders from morning till night. Servants were running hither and thither all the time. The banquet hall was swept and strewn with sweet-scented leaves, and the walls and roof hung with colored silk lanterns and fans. Li Ho was the only one that was not happy and busy. She would sit on her balcony with her embroidery lying idle on her lap, as she gazed wistfully across the river which separated her from her lover. Then the morning of the betrothal feast came. The peach tree was covered with lovely pink blossoms, while the willow blossoms hung, faded and drooped on the tree. Li Ho could not stay on the balcony when she saw this, so she went into her room and sat on a couch, with her head resting on her hand, watching her attendants as they spread out on the floor the beautiful silk dresses the Tajin had sent as a present to his bride. But Li Ho was sad, and cared nothing for these at all, although they were in all the colors of the rainbow, pale blue and pink and yellow and purple, embroidered in gold and silver. One of them was of peach-colored silk, embroidered with pearls, and the woman said, "This is just the dress for a bride." But Li Ho shook her head. "I will not wear peach color any more," she said. Neither was she interested when they brought her the casket of jewels which the Tajin had sent by his servants, and of which the gardener and his wife had spoken. There were diamonds and rubies of a size fit to be worn by the emperor himself, and the necklace of pearls went twice around Li Ho's neck, and hung down nearly to her waist. At last the time came when she must be dressed for her betrothal, and her attendants selected a beautiful blue silk dress, embroidered all over with golden butterflies, because in China butterflies are looked upon as a symbol of married happiness. Then they fastened the pearls around her throat, and put some shining jewels in her hair. "This is going to be a great lady," they said. Flowers in the hair were only for a common people. When they had finished dressing her, Li Ho sent them all away. She was tired with their talk about the Tajin, and she wanted to go out on the balcony once more and see if the willow blossoms were quite faded, and if there was no last message from Wang coming to her on the water. Pretty soon one of the women came back to say that one of the servants wished to speak to her. "Let him come in," said Li Ho impatiently. So here's an illustration. I think it's the only one in this story, I think. Yeah, it's the only one. It's very pretty. I like the pink and black together. It's very pretty. And the little blossoms in the background. Yeah. Then a young man entered wearing a long blue cotton robe. So that's him. That's probably the girl. Obviously. Obviously that's them. It's the two of them. Yes. Okay. The broad straw hat, which half concealed his face, and soon they were alone He took off his hat, making Li Ho a low sweeping bow, and there was Wang himself. For a moment she could not believe it. When they took her in his But when he took her in his arms and kissed her, crumpling up all the golden butterflies in his eagerness, she knew it was really her lover, who had come to save her from marrying the Tajin. "Oh, Wang, how did you get here?" she cried, and Wang told her he came disguised as a beggar. But when I came to the door of the banquet room to ask for alms, everyone was too busy to listen to me, so I managed to slip behind a screen and afterwards find my way to your room. "But how did you get this dress?" asked Li Ho, touching it. "I found it behind the screen where one of the servants must have left it," Wang replied. "And now, Li Ho, how can I disguise you? We must pass behind the screen and through the banquet room into the garden and across the bridge into the gardener's cottage." Li Ho's old nurse had left one of her old garments in the room, and had covered up all of Li Ho's bridal finery except her pretty little gold-embroidered shoes. "Never mind my shoes," she said. "I shall run so fast no one will see them." Then she took her distaff in her hand, because she did not want to be an idle, useless wife to Wang, and she gave him the box of jewels to carry. Probably they should not have taken the jewels, although the Tajin had given them to Li Ho, and it might have been that Wang was in too great a hurry to ask what was in the box. "Come, my darling," said Wang. "The willow blossoms droop upon the bough. We must delay no longer." And indeed, as the lovers crept behind the screen, a light breeze shook the last blossoms of the willow into the ground. "Oh, if my father should see us," whispered Li Ho, holding her lover's hand very tightly. "You need not be afraid," said Wang. "I have prayed to the good genie not to let him catch us. If he comes too near, they will change us into 2 stars or perhaps 2 turtle doves. You would not mind that, would you?" "No, indeed. I do not mind anything but parting from you," replied Li Ho. Then they crossed the garden, and Wang led his sweetheart toward the bridge. They could have run faster had it not been for Li Ho's pretty little shoes, so they had only reached the foot of the bridge when Hing Feng came running after them with a whip in his hand. "Stop the thief who has stolen my daughter," he cried furiously. "Stop, stop." But Wang did not stop at all. He put Li Ho in front of him, and she ran across the bridge first with her distaff, while he followed her with the casket of jewels. Behind them came the mandarin, brandishing his whip. Now the good genie saw that the mandarin was gaining on the lovers, and that they had no chance to escape. "What shall we do?" said one to the other. "They will flog Wang to death and shut up Li Ho for the rest of her life." "Let us change them into 2 turtle doves," said one genie, and then they might be happy after all. So just as the mandarin put out his hand to seize Wang by the shoulder, splash, the box of jewels fell into the water, and Wang and Li Ho were changed into 2 beautiful doves, which flew away at once out of the mandarin's reach, leaving the mandarin there with the whip in his hand and the Tajin's jewels at the bottom of the river. Wang and Li Ho built a cozy nest in the garden from which they could watch the willow and peach tree bloom and fade without any fear of being parted from each other. What became of the mandarin I do not know, but I have an idea that he had a rather unpleasant time explaining to the Tajin how all these things happened. So they lived happily ever after. So yeah, it's one of the few fairy tales that have happy endings, I guess. So it's nice.